Hello and welcome everybody for joining us on Facebook Live. This is a very special day. It's National Threatened Species Day and the launch of Nature Book Week. I'm Micaela Jemison. I'm here from the Wilderness Society, and I'd like to start today by acknowledging that wherever we are today, we're meeting, working and living on the lands of the original people of this land. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and would extend that to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people present here today in this live stream. So welcome. I'm very, very lucky today to be joined by two very special guests. First with us today, I have media star, author, illustrator and nature book ambassador, Rove McManus. Rove, thank you so much for joining me.
Hello, Michaela, and hello, everybody who's watching. I hope we're all doing well in these weird times, but I'm very happy to be here.
And I know you're a bit of a nature lover yourself, so this is a great day for you to be joining us.
I'm a lot of a nature lover. I have a giant poster of a hippo behind me. I mean, for crying out loud, what more proof do you need? Yes, and very proud ambassador for Nature Book Week, of course, kicking off today. So, yeah, wonderful to be here, as I said.
Thank you, Rove. And we're also very lucky to be joined today by a environmental scientist, conservationist, explorer, and shortlisted author this year for the Environmental Awards for Children's Literature, Professor Tim Flannery. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Michaela. It's great to be with you and you too, Rove, and with everyone out there. As you said, Rove, it is sort of weird times, so it's nice to be offering a little bit of support anyway for everyone out there who cares about nature but can't get out into it as much as they'd like.
Yeah, and thank you both for joining me. Again, I'm Micaela Jemison. I'm a former threatened species biologist and now a very, very passionate science communicator for the Wilderness Society. Thank you both, Rove and Tim, for being with us. And thank you to everybody who's actually with us today live. We're going live to 3 Facebook pages, so hopefully the technology stays with us. You'll see some of you from on Rove's page, hi, Australian Geographic and the Wilderness Society pages. So hello to you all. Please, in your comments, let us know where you're watching from. We will be able to see your comments coming through and give you a shout out. And if you have any questions or you want to chat with the 3 of us here today, put them in below and we'll definitely be talking with you. So Threatened Species Day, it's a big day, and I know both of you here have a connection with the environment, conservation and nature. Tim, yeah, you're very well known for discovering many new animal species, and I know, Rove, you've been doing a lot of conservation work with some international conservation groups. Tim, I'd love to start with you. What does Threatened Species Day mean to you? Oh dear. Welcome to technology. I think we just lost Tim. So I'll just go on to you, Rove. What does Threatened Species Day mean to you?
Well, it seems Tim's internet connection is also very threatened. Although, wait, he's back.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, guys. Dropped out. I don't know why. Did you ask me, Michaela, about Threatened Species Day?
I asked you what does Threatened Species Day mean to you, mate?
Yeah, look, I take it really seriously, Michaela. For me, it's a day to reflect a little bit and to observe a little bit and to think about our impact on the world that we're having. Look, I'm old enough, Michaela, to remember when Christmas beetles really were Christmas beetles by the millions in our cities. And remember bogong moths coming and festooning every major building in the city when I was a kid. And those sort of things are gone, and they were once common species. So if you think about them being under threat, and then imagine what the rare things, the threat that they're under. And, you know, there are probably, I don't know, dozens of species in Australia that we're in immediate danger of losing. And I don't want to pass on a poorer world to my children. I want to pass on a richer world. So it's a day to think about all of that for me.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And it makes me think of so many. I've been so lucky to be one of those people who gets to see some of the rarer species around the country that not everybody gets to do that. And I just wanted to give a shout out for people if you're watching, please put in comments below what species you tend to think of on Threatened Species Day. You know, that would be fantastic to hear. I know, Rove, I'd love to ask you, when we do talk about Threatened Species Day, do you have any particular animals that you are concerned about for Australia?
Well, I know, I'll initially say that Threatened Species Day makes me think of the thylacine. That's why we have chosen this day in particular to recognise threatened species. This was the day the very last thylacine Tasmanian tiger died in captivity. And frustratingly, not that long ago, it was around the late 1930s. So it's a bittersweet day in that we have to think about things like that, and especially in Australia, where we are unfortunately the leader in losing many of our species as far as the world goes. One of the ones that's very close to my heart, though, at the moment is the regent honeyeater, which is a bird. I love me birds, Michaela.
Oh,
I know we've
I
spoken
see
about this
that.
before. I know you love the little flying rat, but people like me
Did you
very
hear
much
that,
into...
Tim?
I did. Call him out on it, Michaela.
Oh, we will sort you out, Rove. You're up against two bat people here.
That is very true. And as any supervillain would know, you never want to be up against two bat people. Look, the regent honeyeater is a bird found on the east coast of Australia, southeast predominantly, but used to be spread all up and down the east coast. And their numbers they're listed as critically endangered at the moment. They are beautiful, beautiful birds. And now, due to deforestation in particular, their breeding sites, which used to be linked, so they had a wonderful migration route up and down the east coast, have now been separated into 3 pockets. And that was bad enough until, of course, the devastating bushfires we had at the end of last year, start of this year. So they haven't really been able to know for sure, to check for sure how much that has impacted, when quite clearly it has, but we don't know how much for sure. I worked with Taronga Zoo in Sydney. They have a breeding program. If you go to Taronga Zoo, they do have a walk-through aviary, and in there are regent honeyeaters if you want to see one. And those birds are bred in captivity to be released into the wild. They've released a few hundred into the wild with the hope of increasing the breeding numbers. So that is just one tiny example of a threatened species here in Australia, and birds are probably one people don't think of all that much. That on a day like today, I think of more than any other.
Oh wow! I mean, I must admit, I think I pick more about bats because that is my background. You heard me on that one. But
it's your bag, fair enough.
It's my bag, I know. But it's one of those things. I think all of us are very fairly familiar with the Tasmanian tiger story, and like today, as we said, is Threatened Species Day, which is the day that unfortunately we lost the last one of them in Hobart. And I think one of those things that those are important stories for us as a nation to really get to know, because one of those things it's helps us recognize what we do have and have left to protect. And there's many stories like the one you just said, Rove, with Regent Honeyeater, that we should be telling, and that's why this year Wilderness Society are so excited with to be launching Nature Book Week, which starts today. And Rove, you are our first Nature Book Week ambassador. Can you give us a little bit about how you think storytelling and nature really come together?
Well, I think it's really important as a nature lover. When I was younger, it was very difficult to read about nature in anything other than encyclopedias or very dry, let's say, textbooks. I won't use the term boring because that's insulting, but certainly very dry. It was the idea of getting a kid's book that could give you the facts that you wanted in an entertaining way, and the actual facts. We've all, I'm sure, picked up a book that has a story about a talking animal that wears a costume or something. I've been guilty of creating some of those characters. But I think it's important now. I love the fact that we've got Nature Book Week, and there are so many books out there, and some in the world of fiction and some in non-fiction, that have been created to make the next generation aware of how important the planet, conservation is, and keeping these species around. In fact, one of our shortlist nominees this year for the Environmental Children's Literature Award is called One Careless Night, which is about the last thylacine in captivity. And again, this is a work of fiction. It is a story, but still a beautiful book that does give you the facts as well that you need to know about this creature, this sad loss that we had. And so, yeah, I find it's a great way of blending conservation and literature together, and especially for the most important audience of all, which is the next generation that will be given the mantle.
Yeah, and you mentioned actually the award that's part of Nature Book Week. So Nature Book Week is celebrating all books, connection to nature, both for young and old. But we here at Wilderness Society have been running the Environment Award for Children's Literature, and you can see here there was 10 books that made the shortlist this year. And we're very excited that, Rove, you are one of the judges for this year's award. And it's quite an unenviable task, I will say, having to choose winners out of all of those wonderful books, along with David Lawrence, who's a lovely, amazing children's author, and also Dr. Jenny Martin from the University of Melbourne, who's a science communications specialist. So
and David is a previous winner of this very award.
Highly awarded. He's been there.
And
before.
look, I'm gonna do the right thing, and of course Tim is actually on the short list as well.
Oh, there's a reason
Thanks,
why
Rove.
Tim's with us today as well.
I'm chuffed. I couldn't be more pleased. It's fantastic.
And you know what, Tim? I was actually just great segue, Rove. Who would have known? You're like a professional. I love it. So Tim,
I almost know what I'm doing.
Yeah. Look, one of the things that I know you and I, Tim, as we've kind of outed us already as fellow bat people, one of the things that I think we've been very lucky to do is see some of these amazing species, like the grey-headed flying foxes that you can see here on your screen right now. These are got some amazing animals across the country. Unfortunately, 3 of our 7 large species of flying fox are listed as threatened on our national threatened species list through like threats of like deforestation and things like that. Now, Tim, I was just wondering, like, you and I have been some of the lucky ones to see some of these of Australia's most amazing species and creatures up close, but not everyone gets that opportunity necessarily. Is that kind of why you got inspired to write children's literature in particular?
Yeah, look, it is in part. I guess what I've found is that nature is so astonishing and so rich and so unexpected that it's better than any fiction. You know, if you just go to the facts about species and just relate them, it opens a world of wonder to kids. You know, so I remember starting to research the book, and I thought, I'll do something on whales. I thought I knew whales pretty well, you know. And I just came across this little study of sperm whales. How do sperm whales sleep? Does anyone know? They sleep standing up, believe it or not. I think of all the crazy things. Yeah, they hang in the water, like vertical, like that. I thought, this is fantastic, you know. So every species I researched, once you go deep enough into it, it is incredible. Even the humble jellyfish. I mean, I was astonished. Had to, kind of take a break and sort of pace around the house with a few of the things I found. But it's just, nature is so rich and kids love it. So I think that one of the best ways of engaging children is just opening the wonder of the world to their eyes, because then they see everything afresh, you know. And if you tell some of the stories about how we discovered things like the immortal jellyfish and all that sort of stuff, I mean, it gives kids a chance to think, wow,
Oh, we lost him for a little second there, Rove. He was just saying about jellyfish. I think that was a particular interesting part for you and your family.
Yes, we did read Tim's book, and one of the things that stood out was not just the immortal jellyfish. I don't know if people are aware, there is a jellyfish that starts out.
That's better.
As it gets older, it does die and then just regenerates itself once again. But there is another one that really leapt out for us. It's this one here. It's the zombie jellyfish.
Oh, yeah.
A big favourite in our household. And yeah, like Tim said, it's nature makes it so easy for you to love it. It's fascinating, even no matter what age you are at. There is so much to learn. There's so much to know. There are a multitude of just fun facts that you can learn about nature. I didn't know that about sperm whales, but at the same time, I was once asked by my daughter about what a whale's poo would be like. Like if we're walking along the beach, is there a chance that a whale's poo could wash up on the beach? And what would it look like? How big would it be? And I had to answer her question by going, I don't know. And then looked it up, and my goodness, the idea, it's just, look, it's pretty messy. I'll say that, as most things are when you're talking about a creature defecating. But it just comes out as a big cloud. So thankfully, it's relatively clean. And look, they're doing it in the world's largest toilet. So I guess who are we to judge? But just things like that are also a wonderful bonding experience that you can have, and a wonderful connection as a family and a larger community. When, certainly just for me and my daughter as an example, to sit down and learn these types of the facts and pieces of information together, it also then creates a wonderful galvanizing appreciation and love for nature, which is what this week is all about.
Yeah.
And you know, Rove, those whale poos, they're really important because they fertilize the ocean. Can you imagine? It's sprayed out that cloud of fertilizer, and then you get a massive algal bloom that feeds everything in the ecosystem, and ultimately feeds the whales again, And some whale poo is very valuable because they can poo out a thing called ambergris, which is a kind of a waxy substance that is kind of worth its weight in gold to the people who make perfume. So whale poo, it might sound boring, but it's actually really interesting.
Well, remember that next time you're putting a little spritz on before you head out on a night.
Who would have thought Threatened Species Day? We're here to talk about threatened species and books, but perfume comes up, like in whales. That's amazing.
Oh, you smell amazing. What are you wearing tonight? It's whale
poo. All right. Well, thank you guys. I've got some comments and questions coming in. I'd love to share with you. We asked before, when to our viewers, what kind of species they particularly think of on Threatened Species Day. We have Lee Richard from the Wilderness Society page said the night parrot. That's an amazing bird. I love every time they try and put a new photo of that on Facebook. I'm all over it. Also, so Gary Morton from the Strange Geographics page, corroboree frog. That's also the yellow and black, really tiny little frogs up in alpine areas of Victoria. They're amazing.
Stunning.
Yeah. Stunning
little creatures. Yes.
And
frogs are such an important indicator of an ecosystem and how pristine it is. So, if you've got frogs, it's a very, very good sign.
Yeah. And the other thing is they've got such an amazing little squelchy noise that they make. I know the Wiggles have done a corroboree frog. I have a 3-year-old. I will fully admit, we listen to the Wiggles on a regular basis. They have a squelchy frog song that they did with I think it's down here in Melbourne Zoo down here, and every time we try and squeeze out tomato sauce out of the bottle, it makes that squelchy sauce. He just has corroboree frogs. It's amazing how kids kind of retain that information. We also have Homer Ford Yetchup from WA thinks of Carnaby's cockatoos. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, is Carnaby's cockatoos the only one that's actually ever come off the threatened species list? Is that the one they were originally being shot, and then but we stopped doing that and they came off the threatened species list? Is that the right one?
I'm not sure about that, Michaela. I know globally a couple of species have come off recently, or they've been upgraded from critically endangered to threatened or something like that. But I'm not really a bird expert, so I'll have to defer to others on that. Me. Yeah.
Well, look, I don't know about. I certainly know their numbers are much, much better. These, of course, are a beautiful black cockatoo. But the state of Western Australia, especially in Perth, now has a identification program. So if you find a black cockatoo in your backyard, there is an app where you can let the government know so they can help track numbers a bit better. They actually have protected corridors now where you can be driving on a main road in a built-up suburban area in Perth, and as much as you might, if you were out in the bush, everybody has seen those giant yellow diamond-shaped signs with the silhouette of a kangaroo on there, or or some other animal for a wildlife crossing. They have them for cockatoos. It's one of the few places I've ever seen anywhere on the planet where you can see a cockatoo crossing sign, so that people will drive
Slower.
more cautiously in the areas where cockatoos might be flying through. It's wonderful to see.
I never knew that. That's cool. Well, here we go. We've got it covered. We've got mammals and bird experts here with Rove. We're all good. We have comment from your page, Rove, actually from Chris Farrell. Well done. This is a great presentation. As a parrot lover, I think of the orange-bellied parrots and swift parrots, which I've been lucky to see and capture in the wild. Children and future guardians, this is excellent. So.
Oh, wow. I've never seen one of those, but would love to.
Yeah.
I'm quite envious of that.
Well, I have seen one, Rove. Even though I'm not a bird guy, I saw an orange-bellied parrot down in Port Davey earlier this year in January, and saw the program that's being run there to bring to feed up birds before they migrate. But boy, it's such a difficult problem conserving those species, because they cover such a big area. I mean, they've got to cross Bass Strait, then they've got to find a safe feeding location on the mainland, and we don't know exactly where they all go. It's going to take a big concerted effort, but it's not beyond us. I mean, God, if we can't invest in that sort of thing, then there's something wrong with the country, I reckon.
Yeah, and that's what Threatened Species Day is about, is to remind us that there is still so much more to do, and so much more that we should be doing as well. We have another question actually from our page for you, Tim, actually. It says, it's from Lee Main. She says, for Tim, you're a paleontologist and zoologist. You've studied nature around the world and all the way back in time. How special is Australia's plants and animals compared to the rest of the world, and why is it so important to conserve it?
Wow, well, that's a great question. Thank you. Look, Australia is almost like it's like a living museum that has preserved so much biodiversity from other parts of the world. And just to give you a few examples, there's a turtle in the Northern Territory called the pig-nosed turtle. I don't know whether you've heard of it. Strange little creature. But, 50 million years ago, you could have found them swimming around any pond in Germany. I mean, what was then Germany? They were everywhere. And today they're only in Australia and southern New Guinea. So it's a living fossil in a sense, Even off our coasts, we've got organisms that are living fossils. So the handfish, these little fish that crawl around on the bottom of the Derwent estuary, they're in their own family. They're a strange little animal that kind of walk along the bottom.
Oh dear, we've lost him again for a second there, Rove.
He'll come back. I'm going to start Googling handfish.
I know, they're kind of really cool. Well, while we'll wait for him.
Sounds terrifying, but I'm up for it. I just want to say too, at this point, before we move on, amazing suggestions from everybody, or not suggestions, but nominations for their favourite species. Oh my gosh, look at a handfish.
Okay. Yeah.
Can you see that?
Cool.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Yeah. Imagine that's a living fossil. Just to me, it's every bit as important as a thylacine. I mean, it's a whole family of fish that's only found in southern Australia.
That's crazy. So we have you back, Tim. So you were telling us about the handfish.
Yeah. And look, there's a whole lot of others. The bell clapper shell that people in the southwest of WA pick up on the beach all the time. It's kind of a white shell, about that long. That's another living fossil. People have dug up bell clapper shells when they were excavating the sewers of Paris through rocks that are 50 million years old. Yet the only place you find them today, southwest of WA. So if you open your eyes to Australia's biodiversity and understand how precious it is, what an incredible relic really of times past much of it is, then I think you get a different appreciation.
Yeah. And I think we've done, we're here talking about threatened species, but also some of the books and nature books that allow us to learn more about all of these things. Thank goodness for Google though, Rove, because I wouldn't know what a handfish was without that just now. But I just wonder, you back?
We lost you for a second, but you're back. You're good.
It's okay. That's good. I'm here. I'm just wondering about, in terms of Nature Book Week and this year, you, Rove, particularly being able to judge a lot of the books that were submitted here for the Environment Award, Tim's included, wink, wink, nod, nod. I just was wondering, was there any particular themes or more things about the nature books that you found there that really spoke to you this year?
For me,
Yeah.
well, yeah, it was really about appreciating what's not literally in your backyard, but what I guess most of us are missing at the moment, which is just being able to step out into nature. Especially people in Victoria would know exactly what we're talking about. But just there's one of the books on the shortlist is called A Hollow is a Home, and it is a very thorough book, all about how what you would look at as just being a possibly dead and therefore not very useful tree can be to so many different organisms and species of animal. There was a couple of great titles in the young readers section, which are about, of course, protecting the planet and things like plastics in our oceans, and done in a way that again is I certainly found for my daughter was one of the things that she really connected with. This idea, I've told this story before, like that she has experienced what it is like to see what is taken out of a turtle's stomach, the amount of plastics, things that you probably don't think about, like balloons. Every time you release a balloon and it pops, that rubber usually ends up in the ocean, as does the string that it's attached to, and 9 times out of 10 that will end up in the stomach of a turtle, a species that, like Tim was talking about before, these are living fossils themselves. From the time of dinosaurs, these creatures have come out, and yet we as a species have almost wiped out most of them through our plastics in just a frighteningly short amount of time. So a lot of the books this year I have found are really about tapping into the imagination of a younger generation, but in such a clever way that it is also something that the adults that would read with their children can connect with as well. And to me, that is what is more important than anything. And just on a general note, the fact that the shortlist itself this year is quite phenomenal. That for a shortlist, it's incredibly long, and to think how many books there would have been 26 years ago when the first awards were given out for this prize. I don't know how many there were, but I'm sure it wasn't that many to have this many different categories filled with so many different titles. So just the fact that there are so many books in this range, from fiction to non-fiction for young readers, more picture books as well. It's really, really heartening to see that this is where our future is, and here's to much lengthier shortlists in the future.
Yeah, thanks, Rove. And look, for anyone who we're celebrating all books, including the shortlist here this week for Nature Book. If you want to visit thewildernessociety.org.au, Nature Book Week, you can see it on your screen right now. There's a whole range of online events happening throughout the week, and you can see all of them there. In particular, I particularly like what you said, Rove, about the more practical messages around what we can do to help nature and, our threatened species in some of those books. And you mentioned Hollow is a Home as one. I think, having so much of Australia's native species do rely on our forests and our tree hollows. And Tim, I'm going to throw this one to you. With the bushfires this year and and there is still deforestation happening in parts of the country, how urgent, as we're sitting here on Threatened Species Day, is it that we protect a lot of our forests and what we have left for wildlife?
Well, Michaela, we're facing a national tragedy at the moment because the bushfires burnt through about 21% of the temperate broadleaf forest in Australia, and the biggest area burnt in any previous year was only 2%.
Yeah.
So we've gone up 10 times, and you create these vast burnt areas that...
Oh, he's gone again, but I'm sure he'll be back in a second.
He does good cliffhanger, doesn't he?
I know. It just leaves me hanging.
It's like, let me tell you about this creature called a handfish. Oh, I'm gone.
Exactly.
Here's a terrifying statistic about our forest, and what can we do about it?
Yeah, and we've got ongoing Sorry, guys. We've got ongoing forestry operations in places like Victoria and Tasmania that are felling some of the last bits of unburnt forest, mature forest, and that just has to stop. We're living in a new era now where our ancient forests are more precious than ever and tree hollows are more precious than ever because we've lost so much. So we just need to really rethink our values, I think, and how we go about creating a better, more sustainable Australia.
Yeah. I mean, thank you, Tim. And look,
Absolutely.
that is a serious message. But, you know, today, as much as we are celebrating lighter, more fun ways to communicate and connect on Threatened Species Day, Threatened Species Day does have a very serious message as well that we want to share. And as, you know, working here from the Wilderness Society, you know, we're very much working on this kind of thing. And, you know, part of the solution for us is really around not just, you know, it's about thinking about our national laws to stop habitat loss and deforestation and laws that actually protect species once they're on those threatened species lists. Unfortunately, we want to actually get them off the threatened species list if we can. And so we're proudly advocating for that. And if you want to find out more information, we'll be putting links in the comments below. So for anyone who's more interested about that side of the equation, please click on those links. In particular, happening right now, the federal government is pushing some new legislation through the lower house for the environmental decision making going to the states, and so without first really establishing national environmental standards. And I'm sure maybe, Tim, you've heard about this, and Rove, you may or may not have. But yeah, it's concerning, and so we're just asking. One of the things for Nature Book Week and Threatened Species Day, we want you to get out there, share nature books with your family and friends, but also, if you're passionate about this cause, as we are, you can we're asking people to send messages to their senators to do something about this, you know, before we have a greater extinction crisis problem on our hands. So you'll find those links below. If you're interested, please, you'll find them down there. We have some more questions coming in. One from Nowbell from the Australian Geographic page. How are koalas recovering after the bushfires? Tim, do you want to field that one?
It's going to be a really long and slow process for koalas because these fires are on such a massive scale now, and they kill the koalas in the trees. And then how are the koalas going to get back when these vast areas are burnt? So, you know, when you think about it pretty simplistically, koalas, they might breed once every 12 months, once every 2 years. They only move a certain number of kilometres a year. And when you get these massive bushfires, you know, if they become more frequent, then the scale and the frequency of the fire would just drive the koala to extinction. So we have to think really creatively about how we deal with this, and not just in firefighting, but in actively managing koalas. So I'm really concerned about the koala. I think there's quite a possibility that it'll be lost in the next 30, 40 years unless we have a really focused plan that people agree with.
Yeah, and I think
I think that's a very good point. You know, we live in a society, you know, on today, especially we think about thylacines and how most of us walking around the country at the moment just have accepted a world where they just didn't exist. They were extinct. And it is a very, very real possibility that another generation could have that with something like koalas, which we would otherwise take for granted as something that is quite prevalent. But when they were already in dire straits with the fact that so many of their forest homes were being taken away from them, and to think what is left is now pretty much gone, like Tim says, it's a very, very critically endangering time for them at the moment.
And you know, Rove, you don't only have to just love animals to act on this. Can you imagine how much it would have been worth to the Tasmanian economy if a little group of thylacines had survived somewhere? What you'd have, you know, in terms of tourism and all the rest of it. And imagine koalas. I mean, a lot of people come to Australia to see koalas. They're one of our iconic species. If we lose those, the costs are massive. So it's not just, you know, even those who are not interested in wildlife should really take a serious look at this problem of the loss of biodiversity and work out how we actually maintain the riches of our country.
And so that hopefully that, you know, our kids don't have to read about these animals in books and these wonderful places in books and only be able to experience them in books now. You know, I think we've talked about that wonderful book, the Thylacine book that that you got to read as part of the awards, Rove. None of us really get to see them anymore, even though it's probably one of the most famous threatened species stories of the country. So
yeah, and again, like even if they hadn't been hunted to extinction, and there were still pockets of them around, the question also has to then become, but where would they live? Would there be enough natural forest and habitat left for them to actually survive in the wild? I have a partnership. I'm an international vice president for Fauna and Flora International, which is the world's oldest conservation organization. They've been running for well over 120 years, and have visited all parts of the globe. And one of the places in particular was, two. I'll try to be as quick as I can with these. One of them was the Virunga Mountains in Africa, where I got to trek for mountain gorillas, and in a place where the natural habitat was just being wiped out. As Tim had pointed out, one of the things they realized was for local people to realize that there is more money, rather than in the farming and clearing of the trees, in protecting their native species, being these gorillas, for tourism, and they can benefit from that to now to the point where the money that comes in from gorilla tourism goes back into the communities for schools and health and better roads. So they are seeing the benefits. But places like the Amazon rainforest, which is meant to be protected, and the fringes of it are actually being wiped out by mining companies, which their government allows because there is more money in allowing these companies to come in and clear to mine than there is for them to actually keep the trees for carbon points or whatever it might be. So it's also about us as those that point the fingers at the decision makers to let them know, no, this is what's important, and this is what you will be held accountable for.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned, like, a lot of people think about places like the Amazon, but Australia's up there with the Amazon and Borneo and places like that in terms of deforestation. And that's one of those, I think, facts that not many people really realize. I mean, Tim, you've traveled around the world looking at different places and species and stuff. I mean, what's your take on all of this?
Oh, look, Australia has got one of the highest deforestation rates on the planet, and a lot of the deforestation is happening in northern New South Wales and Queensland. A lot of it has been much was done when it was illegal. The laws have been changed tragically now to make it easier to clear forest in New South Wales and Queensland, and it's just so unnecessary, and it has such big impacts, not just on the forest, but on things like the Great Barrier Reef, because you clear forests and you get runoff onto the Great Barrier Reef, So we have to, we are a wealthy country that could do so much.
Oh, he's leaving us on a cliffhanger again, Rove.
But it's true, as a nation, we should take greater pride in our in the biodiversity that we have. We have so many endemic species here, not to be found anywhere else on the planet. We should really, really take greater pride in what we have as a nation, and making that our priority, rather than what we can dig out of the ground. We should be looking, why we don't give greater importance to renewable energy in this country. Still has me scratching my head. And we can see the terrible effects of things like climate change on a place like the Great Barrier Reef. And we shouldn't just assume that places like these are always going to be there, and that even if they are, that they are still at the level that they should be. And a lot of the places we find ourselves now are something we can't come back from. So all we can do is hopefully not make it any worse than we already have, and that's on us.
Yeah. I think part of what we can do, there's lots of things you can join, different conservation organizations like the Wilderness Society and, the ones that you've been working with, Rove and Tim, obviously. But one of the easiest things as each of us can do is start sharing that love of nature with our families and our friends. And that's what really Nature Book Week is all about. And I'm going to So we're going to have to wrap up soon because it's, this has been such a great conversation, but, time is ticking on. And I've got a question for both of you that's actually been spurred by Dan, who's given us through on the Wilderness Society page. What is one nature book that Tim and Rove thinks everyone should read? Tim, I'm going to throw it to you. What do you think?
Oh my goodness.
The hard curly one.
Just one. It's such a hard question. It really is. Because I mean, I've got my favourites, but I don't know whether they'd appeal to everyone. I mean, Charles Darwin's Voyage of the Beagle is one of the great nature books in a way. It's just such a fantastic adventure story. It's beautifully written. And
now it's yours, Rove.
All right, I'm literally scanning my bookshelf to go, what's the one that I pick up probably more than anything else? Look, I just love something like What Bird Is That? It's this Australian book, which is like just basically a giant field guide. There's a great book called Wilderness Warrior about Theodore Roosevelt, who was one of the first conservationists on the planet. I will put a gratuitous plug in for With Honourable Intent, which is the history of Fauna and Flora International, the organisation that I'm part of.
Nice plug.
So, look, I guess, wonderful to be in a position where you're like, I can't pick just one.
Yeah, that's really true. And you're the same, Tim, your book.
Yeah, well, the other so Darwin would be great. I think David Attenborough's books and his series on TV are just stunning. They're just some of the best stuff ever produced. I'm just reading an amazing book at the moment called Entangled Life. I can show you. It's about fungus, and my God, I tell you, fungus. What a fascinating subject! Unbelievable. We've each got 100 species living on our feet, much less what they do in the rest of the world. And they are, without fungus, we just wouldn't have a world. But it's one of the great books about nature.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, both of you. And thank you to everybody who has been watching and joining with us across different pages of Facebook today. We hope you enjoyed our little Threatened Species Day Nature Book Week chat. Please go ahead and visit wilderness.org.au Nature Book Week. You will find all of the different Nature Book Week events listed there, and a pretty picture of Rove as the ambassador. Tim, Rove, thank you so much. It's been wonderful talking to you both.
Thanks. A pleasure. Thank you very much.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye. Bye, Rove.